close your eyes for 1 second. Imagine two people, same age, same school, same city, same opportunities. But 10 years later, one of them is confident, creative, empathetic, and successful. The other feels stuck, anxious, and mentally exhausted. What is the difference between them? Many things, of course. But research points to one habit more than almost any other. One of them read books, the other did not. This is not a story. This is what the data shows. And today, we are going to understand exactly why. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Matrix English Podcast. I am Maria, and today I have one question for you. When did you last read a book? Not a message on your phone, not a post on social media, a real book, real pages, real words, one after another. Maybe it was yesterday, maybe it was last year, maybe you cannot even remember. Do not worry, you are not alone. Most people today read less and less every year, and most people feel less focused, less calm, and less creative every year. Interesting connection, right? Today we find out why. Because reading is not just a hobby. Reading is not just something students do for school. Reading is one of the most powerful things you can do for your brain. And today, science will prove it. So get comfortable. Let us go. Let us start with something simple. What actually happens inside your brain when you read? When you look at a word on a page, your eyes send a visual signal to your brain. Your brain recognizes the shape of the letters, identifies the word, and connects it to meaning. All of this happens in less than 1 second. For every single word. It sounds simple, but it is actually one of the most complex cognitive operations your brain performs all day. But here is what makes reading truly remarkable. Your brain does not treat words like data. Your brain treats words like experience. In 2013, researcher Gregory Burns at Emory University asked participants to read a novel, a historical thriller called Pompeii. Then he scanned their brains with an MRI machine for 5 consecutive days after reading. What he found was remarkable. Reading the novel activated not just the language areas of the brain, it activated the sensory cortex and the motor cortex as well. When participants read about a character running, the brain areas connected to actual physical movement became active. When they read about touching a rough stone wall, the areas connected to touch and sensation became active. Your brain does not just read words. Your brain lives inside the story. It physically simulates the experience. Scientists call this embodied cognition, the idea that language triggers the same neural systems that would be activated by the real physical experience. Reading about swimming activates your motor cortex almost as if you were actually swimming. Reading about the smell of fresh bread activates your olfactory system. Reading about fear activates the same threat response circuits in your brain as real danger. This is why a great book can make your heart beat faster. This is why your palms get sweaty during a tense scene. This is why you can feel genuine sadness when a fictional character dies. Your brain is not pretending. Your brain is actually experiencing it. Reading is not passive consumption. Reading is one of the most active and immersive mental experiences a human being can have. And this has a very important implication for language learners. When you read English, you are not just seeing words. You are building a physical, sensory, emotional map of the language inside your brain. Every scene you read, every emotion you feel through English words, every situation you follow in an English story, all of it becomes part of your neural representation of that language. This is why people who read extensively in a foreign language develop a much deeper and more intuitive feel for that language than people who only study grammar rules and vocabulary lists. Now let us talk about empathy. This is one of the most powerful and surprising effects of reading, and one that most people never expect. Empathy means the ability to understand and feel what another person is experiencing. It is one of the most important social and emotional skills a human being can have. Good empathy leads to better relationships, better communication, better leadership, and better mental health. And research shows clearly that reading, specifically reading literary fiction, significantly and measurably increases empathy. In 2013, psychologists David Comer Kidd and Emanuele Castagno at the New School for Social Research conducted 5 separate experiments to test this idea. They gave different groups of participants different types of reading material. Some read literary fiction, serious novels with complex characters and deep psychological insight. Some read popular fiction, entertaining stories with clear heroes and villains and simpler emotional worlds. Some read nonfiction articles, and some read nothing at all. Then all participants completed the same test, the Reading the Mind and the Eyes test, developed by psychologist Simon Baron-Cohen at Cambridge University. In this test, you look at photographs of only the eye region of a person's face, nothing else, and you have to identify the emotion that person is feeling, just from the eyes. It is a well-validated measure of what scientists call theory of mind, your ability to model and understand other people's inner mental states. The results were striking. People who read literary fiction scored significantly higher on the empathy test than every other group. Popular fiction readers scored slightly higher than nonfiction readers, and nonfiction readers scored only marginally better than people who read nothing. Literary fiction produced by far the strongest effect. Why does literary fiction specifically have this power? Because good literary fiction presents characters who are genuinely complex, characters whose motivations are unclear, whose emotions are contradictory, whose behavior is sometimes surprising or morally ambiguous. Reading these characters requires active mental work. You have to build a model of another mind. You have to ask yourself, why did she do that? What is he really feeling? What does this character want that she is not saying out loud? This mental exercise, building and updating your model of another person's inner world, is exactly the cognitive process behind real-world empathy. Popular fiction and movies, by contrast, typically give you characters with clearly labeled emotions and obvious motivations. You do not have to work hard to understand them. You are told how to feel about them. And so, you get the entertainment, but not the deep cognitive workout that builds empathy. Think about what this means for your daily life. Every difficult conversation you have, at work, at home, with a friend, requires you to understand what the other person is feeling, even when they do not say it directly. Every conflict that gets resolved peacefully requires empathy. Every strong relationship is built on it. And reading literary fiction trains this skill in the most enjoyable way possible. Now let us talk about stress, because this result genuinely surprised the scientific community when it was first published. In 2009, researchers at the University of Sussex conducted a study on stress reduction methods. They gathered participants and deliberately raised their stress levels through a series of difficult tests and challenges. Then they divided participants into groups and gave each group a different relaxation activity. Some listened to music, some went for a walk, some drank a cup of tea, some played video games, and one group simply read a book for just 6 minutes. The researchers measured physiological stress markers, heart rate, blood pressure, and muscle tension before and after each activity. Reading reduced stress levels by 68%. That was the most effective method of all, more effective than music, which reduced stress by 61%, more effective than tea, which reduced stress by 54%, more effective than walking, More effective than video games. 6 minutes of reading, 68%. The lead researcher, Dr. David Lewis, explained the reason. When you read, your attention focuses completely on the narrative or the text in front of you. Your mind stops cycling through its list of worries and problems. Your muscles relax because your body follows your mental state. Your breathing slows and deepens. Your heart rate decreases. You enter what psychologists call a flow state, a state of complete absorption in a single activity. And in that state, the physiological markers of stress decrease dramatically. Dr. Lewis described this effect as more than simple distraction. He said that reading transports the reader into a different mental space entirely, and that transportation is what produces the therapeutic effect. It is not that your problems disappear. It is that your brain temporarily disengages from the stress response system and enters a completely different mode of processing. Interestingly, watching videos or scrolling social media does not produce the same result. Researchers believe this is because reading requires you to construct the images, the voices, and the world yourself inside your own mind. This active construction is what pulls you fully away from your stress. So the next time you feel overwhelmed at the end of a difficult day, before you reach for your phone, try reaching for a book instead. 6 minutes, just 6 minutes. Now, let us talk about vocabulary. This is directly and practically important for every English learner listening today. Research consistently shows that extensive reading a lot, regularly, at a comfortable level, is the single most effective way to build vocabulary in a second language. More effective than flashcard apps, more effective than vocabulary lists, more effective than grammar workbooks, more effective than translation exercises. Why? Because real vocabulary knowledge means knowing how a word behaves in the real world, what words it appears with, what situations it fits, what emotion or tone it carries, what it implies beyond its dictionary definition. When you read in English, you encounter words in context. Your brain does not just store the definition, it stores the scene, the emotion, the character, the moment. And that rich, multi-layered representation is what makes a word truly yours. It is the difference between knowing that melancholy means a kind of sadness and actually feeling the weight and texture of that word when you encounter it in a sentence. A 2007 study by language researchers Paul Nation and Robert Waring found that extensive readers encountered the same high-frequency words hundreds or even thousands of times across many different contexts. And that distributed repetition, seeing the same word again and again in different situations, is exactly what the brain requires to move a word from fragile short-term memory into solid, permanent, long-term memory. The brain learns vocabulary the same way it learns everything else, through repeated, varied, meaningful exposure over time. Nation and Waring also found something important about reading level. The most effective vocabulary growth happens when a learner reads material where they already know approximately 95 to 98% of the words. They can understand the text comfortably, and when they meet an unknown word, the surrounding context gives enough information to make a reasonable guess. This is called learning from context. It is the most natural form of vocabulary acquisition. It is exactly how children learn their first language, not from dictionaries, but from words used in meaningful situations, thousands and thousands of times. This is precisely why this podcast is designed the way it is. Every episode gives you real, meaningful ideas in English at a level that is accessible but not too easy. Every word you hear in context, every sentence you follow, every idea you engage with All of it builds your English vocabulary in the deepest and most durable way possible. Now, let us talk about something that is becoming a serious problem in the modern world: focus. The average human attention span has been declining for years. Smartphones, social media feeds, notifications, autoplay videos, all designed to capture and redirect your attention as frequently as possible. The entire business model of social media depends on keeping you in a state of constant, rapid attention switching. And after years of training your brain to jump from one thing to another every few seconds, many people today find it genuinely difficult to concentrate on one thing for more than a few minutes. This has real consequences. Reduced focus means reduced productivity. It means reduced ability to learn new things. It means reduced capacity for deep thinking, creative problem solving, and meaningful conversation. It means a brain that is constantly reactive, always responding to the next notification, rather than calm, directed, and proactive. Reading is the direct opposite of this. Reading demands sustained, uninterrupted attention on a single thing, one page, one paragraph, one idea. You cannot skim a good book the way you skim a social media feed. You have to follow the story or the argument from sentence to sentence, from page to page. If your attention wanders and you read a paragraph without actually processing it, you have to go back. The text waits for you. It does not move on without you. Every reading session is a training session for your attention. Every time you resist the urge to check your phone and instead stay with the page, you are strengthening the neural circuits associated with sustained focus. This ability is becoming increasingly rare in modern society and increasingly valuable. The people who can sit with a difficult problem or a complex text for an extended period are the people who produce the most creative and meaningful work. Neuroscientist Marianne Wolf at UCLA has spent her career studying what reading does to the brain. She found that deep reading, the slow, focused, immersive kind of reading you do with a serious book, activates a unique combination of cognitive processes that quick digital reading does not activate. These include critical thinking, analogical reasoning, inferential thinking, and empathy. She calls the brain that develops through deep reading the reading brain. And she argues that this is the most cognitively sophisticated form of the human brain that has ever existed. Wolf also warns about what happens when we stop reading deeply. Children who grow up reading primarily on screens, in short bursts with constant interruptions, develop strong skills for quick information retrieval, but show reduced capacity for deep comprehension, critical thinking, and sustained analysis. Wolf worries that we are slowly losing the reading brain as a society, and with it, some of the most valuable cognitive capacities humans have ever developed. The good news is that anyone can rebuild the reading brain at any age. Your brain is plastic. It changes based on what you repeatedly do. Start reading deeply, and your brain will rewire itself to support that activity. One last important connection: reading and sleep. In a previous episode of this podcast, we talked about sleep in detail, how sleep consolidates memory, how the brain transfers new learning from the hippocampus to the cortex during sleep, how the glymphatic system cleans toxic proteins from the brain every night. Reading connects with sleep in two powerful and practical ways. First, reading a physical book before bed is one of the most effective ways to prepare your brain for high-quality sleep. Your mind becomes focused and calm. Your breathing slows. Your muscles relax. This is exactly the physiological state you need to transition smoothly into sleep. And physical books do not emit blue light, unlike phones and laptops, so they do not suppress melatonin production or delay your ability to fall asleep. Reading before bed supports your sleep. It does not disrupt it. Second, Whatever you read before, sleep benefits from overnight memory consolidation. Your brain will process and strengthen that information during the night. You will wake up with a deeper, more durable memory of what you read. This means that reading before bed is not just relaxing, it is one of the most efficient learning strategies available. You are combining two of the brain's most powerful tools in one simple evening routine. Many of the world's most productive and successful people, from Bill Gates to Barack Obama to Oprah Winfrey, have consistently described a nightly reading habit as one of the most important things they do. This is not a coincidence. It reflects a deep, evidence-based understanding of how the human brain actually works. So let us bring everything together now. Reading activates your brain more deeply than almost any other daily activity. It triggers your sensory and motor systems, making your brain simulate physical experiences from words alone. It builds empathy by training you to model and understand the inner lives of complex characters, a skill that transfers directly to real human relationships. It reduces stress by 68% in just 6 minutes, more effectively than music, tea, or exercise. It builds vocabulary through meaningful, repeated exposure in rich context, the most natural and durable form of language learning possible. It trains your focus and attention in a world that is actively and deliberately trying to destroy both. And it works synergistically with your sleep to consolidate everything you have learned and calm your brain before rest. Reading does not just make you smarter, it makes you calmer, more empathetic, more focused, more creative, more resilient, more human. And here is the most important thing. You are already here. You are already listening. You are already engaging with real ideas in English, following arguments, understanding vocabulary and context, building your comprehension naturally. In a very real sense, this is reading for your ears. You are already training your reading brain, one episode at a time. Now take the next step. Find a book in English at your level on a topic that genuinely interests you. It does not have to be a classic. It does not have to be difficult. It just has to be something that makes you want to turn the next page. Start with 10 pages tonight, just 10 pages, and tomorrow 10 more. Your brain will do the rest because that is what brains do when you give them good material, consistent practice, and enough sleep. They grow, they change, they become something better than they were before. Thank you so much for being here today. I am Maria. This is Matrix English Podcast. Read more, sleep well, think deeply, and I will see you in the very next episode.